Brendan Bullock is just back from a trip. And so he's a documentary photographer living in Westbrook. He set out to study philosophy, and in the last couple of years of college, photography kind of crept in and increasingly became a bigger part of his life. Upon graduating in 2001, he interned at the White House Press Corps. And so with the White House Press Corps photographer in DC, and shortly after he moved to Santa Fe, and he worked in galleries and apprenticed with a professional photographer for a long time. And in Santa Fe is where he began to exhibit his work and had his first solo show. So he returned east in 2007 and landed in Portland and was doing fine art and showing in galleries, and then he ended up at the Maine Media Workshop up in Rockport, I think. And he's now in his 10th year of image making. He's teaching, and he's doing lessons, private workshops, shooting editorial and assignment work, and also doing, in the summer, he calls it wedding photojournalism, so which is different than wedding photography, I guess. I don't know. But while his subject is documentary photography, though, you should check out his website. And I think he's going to present mostly about a recent trip to Peru. But the blurring the line between art and documentary photography is, you're going to see some really stunning images. So I'd like to present Brendan Bullock.
Thanks, Doug. I do. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I guess I'll just go ahead and start. So 10 years ago, I had this sort of crazy idea that I could be a photographer, and lo and behold, it's coming to pass, which is really quite something and feels very much like a blessing. I spent the last 2 seasons, as Doug said, at Maine Media Workshops in Rockport, which was an experience that opened up so many doors for me, and that I feel so grateful for. I just returned from Peru this past week, so these are all very new images. I had the unique opportunity of spending 3 weeks in Peru, traveling the country and working one-on-one with a single student, working on documentary photography technique. One of my good friends and fellow teachers likes to ask his students to think about what it is that they're wired to do, which is an idea that I think we can sort of think about generally. But certainly in terms of photography and documentary photography, it's important to think about what kind of environments or situations one works well in. Also, time is an issue. How much time are you willing to spend with your subjects? And I know for me personally that I'm most creatively satisfied when I can get invested in the lives of those who I'm photographing, even if that's only for an afternoon or for 3 days that I spent with Senior Zenia and his family in the rice fields. So, you know, having time where the camera can sort of sit on the ground and pictures aren't even being made, but a dialogue is happening, so that by the time the camera does kind of enter the scene, and it's time to make images, it feels like more of a kind of a natural part of an exchange and less of just a taking. So in this trip, we started in the northern part of Peru. The images that you're seeing are from the town of Tucumay, which is not too far south of Ecuador. We started there and sort of made our way south. This is inside a little colectivo. If you get around the way the locals do, you're in a little colectivo, a van that they smush as many people into as possible, and a great place to see faces and meet people. There is a presidential election that's going on in Peru. In 2 months from now, I think there's 10 candidates, so that there's a lot of jockeying for position going on at the moment. And so everywhere you go are placards and houses that are painted with political slogans and the various signs of political parties. We made our way north. We ended up passing through the beach town of Huanchaco, where this image was made. Just so happened to hit it right as they were hosting an international surfing competition. And so these guys are setting up scaffolding for that event. we were passing that way, heading down to the city of Trujillo. Trujillo is the second largest city in Peru, home to some incredible Spanish architecture, and my favorite, the indoor market, which is this sort of insane labyrinth of vendors and stalls. And a lot of the vendors nap in the afternoon, as this fellow is doing. We were in Trujillo for the express reason of documenting the marinera dancing competition. Marinera is the national dance of Peru. It's an object of great national pride. And it's a dance that symbolizes the wooing of a country gentleman by a wealthy city woman, which is sort of interesting in and of itself. And the whole scene was a great teaching tool because it was held in the Plaza del Toros, this huge bullfighting arena. And inside were all these television cameras and ads and throngs of almost, like European soccer fans going crazy. And so one would sort of naturally assume that that's kind of where the pictures were happening. But for me, a good environment for me was not inside, it was outside in these little courtyards where very quietly these dancers were practicing their routines before they went in to compete. And the sound of the music sort of wafted out of the arena and made its way out. And almost wordlessly, just over and over and over again, these couples would go through their routines. So I spent several days just hanging out in these courtyards and making images. We left Trujillo and headed for Cuzco. Cuzco, as some of you may know, is the sort of entry point to the Sacred Valley. If you're headed to Machu Picchu, for example, you're probably going to pass through Cuzco. And when you leave Cuzco and head up into the Sacred Valley, you enter a very different world. It's sort of like going back into a time warp. The faces, the clothing, the lifestyle is absolutely incredible and feels like it's gone unchanged for quite some time. And I was very happy to be there. I felt very comfortable there. And perhaps it has something to do with growing up in New England, growing up in Vermont and spending some time around farms. But I definitely feel very compelled by people whose work is tied to the land. I think it breeds a certain sort of character, and the life has a certain pace to it. These are women selling their potatoes and beans in the street markets of Urubamba. So traveling up from Urubamba and Ollantaytambo up into a very small weaving community by rough roads, these women herding sheep, speaking Quechuan, the little town of Pechakucha, where they weave and work with wool every day in the way that they have for several hundred years, if not much longer. Also in that area, a visual spectacle, the salt mines of Maras. This is only a fraction of what takes up an entire valley. These salt mines have been in action going back some 2,000 years to pre-Incan times. And the last image I'm going to leave you with tonight is a mother and her son hauling these 50-pound blocks of salt out of the mines on their backs. So just a very small sampling of a lot of amazing work that was made and things seen over the course of this 3-week teaching journey. There's more to see. There'll be more on my website. If anybody's curious, I'll be happy to give you a card with the address. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It's very cool. Just beautiful shots.